Hi, my name is Casper. I'm a test expert here at Incida, and in today's video I want to go through the basics of how to process data in SAFe. So if you're new to SAFe and want to learn how to measure, test and process your data, this is the video for you. So just to go through what we have here in a SAFe project is that we have some sound recording set up as an example for this test. It could be any kind of measurement. So we have some hardware setup and we have a simple test procedure that logs our date and logs both some raw sound measurements and an average sound measurement, which is called LEQ, just to have some data that we can process. So if we are in our data processing, we have these two steps. We have step 1 and step 2, and we want to process this data. Now the first thing that you will recognize is that if you go into the properties of our step, we can see that we have some calibration and a buffer size. And here it is important to notice the buffer size, because our sound recording records at 48,000 samples per second. So if our buffer size is 0, that means that we only output data when our measurement is done. So if you measure for 10 seconds, we get 480,000 samples out at once. But we can go in and change this to basically whatever we want to. So let's say we want per second, we would write 48,000 samples. So each time 48,000 samples have been buffered up, it becomes sent out into our processing. Now we could potentially go all the way down to 1, but in this case, our PC would probably break down and the program would crash, because sending out one sample and we are recording 48,000 samples per second really means that we push the limits over its capabilities. So just recognize this when you're doing measurements and having a very high sample rate, for example, for sound measurements. We could also have LEQ, which is an average, and here it's probably averaging around 1 sample per quarter second, so here would be no problem to write 1. If you're using Modbus or Skippy or any other sort of device which maybe samples 1 time per second, using buffer size 1 is perfectly fine. So what you want to do is to add some processing to our data processing. We can either right click and add data processing block, or we can just press add. And here we get our different tools that we can use. So we have common control tools, visualizations that we can use on our dashboard. We have some utilities such as setting units and legends and so forth, and then a whole lot of different mathematics, standard mathematics, statistics, signal processing, using for matrix operations and so forth. In this case, let's just use what is commonly used, the repeater, just to say we want to repeat our signal because we want our raw measurements both in a graph, and we want it, let's say we want to take, let's say, a maximum of this and output that in a number. And now we build a very simple data processing. Notice that on each of these cables we have m times n, and if you're familiar with matrix notation, this is the number of rows and n is the number of columns. So in this case, when we output a single channel of 48,000, it would be 48,000 as our m and 1 as our n. And when we start, let's just press play here. When we run this, we can also see that as its outputs, it actually shows us it when we run it. So when we go in let's say in our max, and we have our axis. Axis 0 actually means the rows, and axis 1, again in matrix notation, is our columns. And this is pretty much a property that is on every single data processing. Again, repeater, it basically takes our recording and repeats it, so it's outputs here and it's outputted here. We could also, again, go into controls, use a combiner, just to go through the basics controls, which, let's say, we wanted to do like combine these two, and we wanted to combine them in axis 1, we would get 48,000 times 2. If we can lock them together, get the same signal but in 2 columns. And then the last is of the simple ones is a splitter, so we can actually split this again. Let's say we want to split it again in axis 1 because it's the columns that we want to split, and then use it like this. So these are the basic ones that you could be using. We of course also have text, and you can use different file formats, Python scripts, you want that. There are loads of different opportunities, but this, what I've just been walked you through, is the basics of our data processing. The last thing I just want to show is that if you have test cases, we have a special test case where you can use test case evaluations. So if you have x under 5, for example, in your test case condition, you can use test case evaluation to actually evaluate that specific condition. Graphs, numbers, and everything in our visualizations is something that we can go in and add under our results in our dashboard. But I'll walk you through that in another video. I hope you found this helpful, and if you want to learn more, go to our website, and else I'll see you in the next video.